Ardent, Manitoba, Chadwick Ginther was fascinated by Norse mythology at an early age. Today he spins sagas of his own set in the wild spaces of Canada's western wilderness, where surely monsters must exist. He is the author of the pre-award-nominated Thunder Road trilogy, where, and I teased him about this, but it's intentional, all of the books start with T and are 3 syllables long. And they're alphabetical, so we're not quite sure what the next book is going to be. Thunder Road, Tombstone Blues, and Too Far Gone. Chadwick is a contributor to Quill and Choir, the Winnipeg Review, the Prairie Books Now. His short fiction has appeared recently in Superhero Universe, Grimdark Magazine, and the Exile Book of New Canadian War. He lives and writes in Winnipeg, where, as I mentioned before, he is one of the 2 co-chairs of the Winnipeg ChiSeries. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really glad for Chadwick Ginther to be with us tonight to read. So ladies and gentlemen, give it up to Chadwick Ginther.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. If I had to accidentally read at the Winnipeg ChiSeries when one of our readers wasn't able to make it at the last second, so I think if I go to Peterborough, I've got the set. So that's pretty exciting. The comic collector in me likes that idea of having a complete run. So it's a good thing that Mark didn't put a story of his own in Superhero Universe, because otherwise there might not have been room for me. That was a really fun story. But I am going to read from Too Far Gone tonight. It's the final book in the Thunder Road trilogy. What you need to know if you have not read any of the series before is that Ted Callan was an unemployed oil worker who witnessed the fire giant Surtur explode out of a rig in northern Alberta. Shortly thereafter, he got tattooed with 9 magical gifts by dwarves in a seedy hotel in Winnipeg, as happens. After my first reading, somebody came up to me and they said, "You have spent a night at the Osborne Village Inn, haven't you?" And they were correct. These gifts include strength, invulnerability, weather control, and 2 ravens that talk to Ted, even though he wishes they wouldn't. He has fought giants and gods alongside the last of the Norns and the trickster god Loki. All 3 of them are on the outs at the moment. At the start of this book, Ted is hitchhiking from Winnipeg to Edmonton to attend his best friend's wedding when the ravens Hunan and Munin tell him about strange doings outside of a farm, at a farm outside of Saskatoon. Now, the passage I'm going to read tonight is loosely based on true events. The van drove off, leaving Ted at the side of the road. Bonfires dotted a farmyard not far away. The property was over a set of railway tracks. A single-story farmhouse was tucked into some trees at one corner of the yard. Rusty farm machinery, harrows and combines, and an old truck decorated the fallow field. 2 men in replica Viking garb banged swords on shields as Ted approached. Fires lit all over the farmyard were enough to see by, and the gathering crowd were a curious mix of historically accurate Vikings and leather-clad metalheads. There were enough grease-paint-covered faces for Ted to think he'd stumbled on a Kiss tribute band. Enough Vikings he could have gone back in time. One of the Vikings asked, "What do you want?" "I'm here for the show." They scanned Ted's appearance, scowling. He didn't know how far word of his tattoos might have spread through the gossip lines of the 9 worlds. It seemed everybody he'd crossed paths with knew the name the dwarves had given him, Ofrika. He rolled up a sleeve of his jacket to show them his Mjolnir tattoo. It was a common enough symbol. Despite being a complete dick, Thor had been a popular guy. For a second, Ted thought they'd lay into him with those swords until one man held out his hand and said, $20. Seems steep. Ted grumbled as he fished a bill out of his jeans. A broad, hungry grin from the Vikings. "It'll be worth it." Fucking better be. Ted walked past the 2 Vikings and sidled through the milling crowd towards a stage set up out in the field. He passed duels fought with swords, axes, and daggers. Weapons clanged off each other and thudded against heavy wooden shields. Aside from the weaponry, he could have been at any small outdoor music festival. There were people fighting, fucking, drinking, puking. Straw bales were laid out in the field as seats, but only a handful of people were using them. They drank from horns instead of plastic cups. A dog loped through the crowd with a stolen hot dog in its jaws. A skeletal-looking sculpture of riveted iron stood next to the stage. He recognized some guys making their way toward it, former patch workers who'd moved on to potash after the fires in northern Alberta hadn't stopped. Didn't seem like this should be their sort of thing, but looks could be deceiving. No one would guess at first glance Ted liked Mary Lou Lord as much as Motorhead. The sculpture was old, rusted-out farm equipment, bent and welded into the shape of a giant. The metal figure loomed, one leg resting in the dirt, as if the sculpture were straddling the stage. An arm reached out toward the audience. Ted shuddered. Bonfires made the metal glow, a sharp contrast against the dark hollows of the sculpture. Voices chanted the giant Surtur's name. That is not a good thing. He felt an unwelcome pressure, as if every eye in the crowd was on him. They were. Maybe this wasn't the best place to be flashing Mjolnir around, calling lightning. It'd be overkill to use his powers on a bunch of obsessive twats who wish they were a crow. There were some big guys in the crowd. Mike, George, be back here. There were some big guys in the crowd, and Ted wouldn't be able to wade through them without it being obvious he was something a little more, a little less than human. There was no defense in the Canadian Criminal Code for being O'Freether. If the dwarves wanted him to be their unpeace, they'd better be prepared for some bad press. Remember, Munin said, whatever they might want of you, you're supposed to be flying under the radar. I'm trying. A couple of larger guys shouldered into Ted as they headed towards the beer tent. Piss off, one of them said. The other followed it up with a muttered, jerk off. Ted clenched his fist. Mjolnir would make short work of them. Try harder, Munin said. In front of the stage, the crowd chanted and shoved. It looked as if a fight was going to break out at any moment. A dozen fights. 100. People climbed inside the sculpture, thrusting arms between its metal ribs and screaming. Ted's nose wrinkled. He'd been around enough big equipment in his life that he knew the stink of diesel. He was on a farmyard. There should be diesel here. But this, it was everywhere, as if it had permeated the soil. He dropped to one knee and dipped 2 fingers through the straw and into the ground. Lifting them to his nose, he could smell the scent more clearly. Fuel. Fire. All it needed was a spark, and the entire place could go up. These people planned on summoning Surtur all right. They'd given some thought to how to succeed. All they needed was the right spark. Ted had a feeling it was him. A guitar droned from behind the stage. A snare hit. Bass drum pounded. He could appreciate the suspense the band was creating, till the curtains set afire and the singer sang. The band dressed like the bastard kids of both their fan bases. Black leather, studs and chains, shit-kicker boots, grease paint faces. They wore black wolf skins for cloaks and taxidermied beasts' heads. Wore more helmet than hood. Human limbs jutted from the metal giant, index and pinky fingers held out from a fist, throwing the horns. Surtur! 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 The chants were as loud as the music, and over top it all, Ted could hear the king of Muspelheim's laugh. Look, look, look. On Ted's back, his tattoo of Yggdrasil trembled. He felt the power at play. These dumb bastards could do it. They could bring the giant here. It was hard to make out any individual in the swarming mass. Fire and smoke obscured them. He could almost understand them. Ted had been yelled at enough in Icelandic that he could make out some Nordic words. The names he understood. Thor, Odin, Fenrir, Surtur. The chant shifted. The crowd closed in on him, every lip, speaking a new name. Fehu. He knew that one too. It was the rune of primal fire, of creation, of destruction. Fehu was the rune of Surtur. Everyone in the crowd held lighters. Not unusual for a concert, not a great mix for a venue doused in diesel. I see you, O'Freether, they all said in one voice, flicking their bics. Flames jumped from the lighters and into their eyes. Ted smelled something like caramelized jelly. Thick, black smoke emanated from their mouths, choking stink that took his mind back to the patch and to Surtur. To the day he'd been confronted by something beyond reason, something that viewed human life as meaningless. Now that Ted's life did have meaning for the giant. Surtur wanted to end it. From the stage, the band intoned, "Surtur! Surtur! Surtur!" followed by, "We all see you, O Father." Screams rose from inside the metal giant as those within burned alive. The crowd poured toward Ted like ants hunting sugar, a wall of humanity, fire-eyed and angry as sin. He never should have left Winnipeg. He hated proving people right.